Ooh, ooh, ooh. All right, good people. All right. We are pressing on. We are getting close to the end of our textbook reader, and we are just going to continue with some interesting topics, still dealing with social institutions and social issues. This week, we are going to be talking about citizenship and national identity. Whoo, this one is going to be interesting, because in recent years, our country has been dealing a lot with this hot button issue of immigration, a very big hot button issue. And so one of the things that I have for you this week is a very insightful presentation by Dr. Barbara Zaborowski. I'm going to strongly encourage that you watch this presentation because your assignment this week matches up with her presentation. And my alarm is going off, so excuse me, please. All right, sorry about that. So the presentation by Dr. Barbara Zaborowski is based on getting you to think about your history, your personal family history as it relates to citizenship and national identity. And I'm not going to give the ending away. You will see what it is for your weekly assignment of how you're going to begin to apply the information in these articles and from Dr. Zaborowski's lecture to your assignment. Okay, but first let me just talk a little bit about the articles for this week. So the first article that you're going to be reading by C. Matthew Snip is entitled "The First Americans, American Indians." And so this article it's basically almost like a very it's a quick history lesson, we'll say, in regards to the indigenous people, the Native Americans. Excuse me. And this author specifically looks at, again, this historical summary of the treatment of American Indians, the Native Americans, our indigenous people. And he looks at this based on removal, assimilation, the Indian New Deal, so our governmental policies, termination and relocation. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Do we really got to do that, Miss Yvette? Why, yes, we do. And also dealing with the self-determination of the indigenous people. So as when you're reading through this article, again, you're going to notice that it's going to seem like you're reading a history book, but I need you just to stick and stay. I need you to be patient, good people, and push through and read this information. Because one of the things that that the author begins to talk about is kind of what was the goal, what was the mission, the vision of the government. And one of the things that he points out is that the mission, the vision, the goal of the government was to, quote, civilize Native Americans, our indigenous people, to civilize them through religion, to civilize them through education, through ownership, meaning like they're going to take away their land, and to civilize them so that they would have a sense of belonging. Oh, really? So as you read through this article, you're going to get to the point where you'll see this author begins to talk about self-determination and the importance that the Native Americans find, first of all, in knowing who they are and focusing on their culture, highlighting their culture, whether they are living in a rural area or whether they're living in urban America. And this is similar to the article that we read earlier in the semester about the Native Hawaiians and their culture and their language. So be mindful of that as you're reading through this particular article. Okay, so the second article that we're going to be reading, it is entitled, "Is This a White Country or What?" And this is by Lillian Rubin. So this article is all about what Lillian is doing is she is making a link between economics, racial prejudice, and the anti-immigration sentiments that are coming from, or that seem to be the focus of, working class white America. Now, what does that mean? And how do we make understanding of that? One of the things that she talks about is that in recent times, it seems as if that immigration and economics kind of seems to be intertwined a little bit. And the reason being is because what the author talks about is that it seems that working class white America kind of links economics and immigration and look at that as a threat to their economic livelihood. And so that's why it's become such a big problem and such a talked about issue. Now, just as we had discussed earlier in the semester about, and we discussed this with ethnicity, I believe it was, when we were looking at ethnicity and religion, about how fluid we could say some white Americans are in acknowledging their ethnicity when it becomes necessary. And that's something, again, that this author, Lillian Rubin, that she explores as well in this article. Okay, so the final article, I believe it's the final, no, this is the third article, sorry, that we're going to be reading this week. It is entitled, Are Asians Becoming White? And again, back in, I want to say it was week 4, when we spoke about ethnicity. Again, we're talking about the whole idea of Asians being, or I should say this author is exploring the concept of Asians being referred to as the model minority. And one of the things that this author points out, that she says this category becomes problematic for the Asian community is basically because society has begun to clump in Asians all into one group and fails to recognize that the Asian community, that Asian community that has several cultures that is inclusive of. And so the thing about that is that for some Asian Americans, it feels as though, while not being recognized by their culture and being kind of forced into the white category, some Asian Americans feel as though that ignores or that it plays into ignoring the achievements of several different, or of the various Asian cultures that are represented. One of the things that the author also describes, that she talks about, is that when we begin to group all Asians in as one group in order to help them to be our minority, our model minority, a lot of people begin to view this as the norm, and Asians begin to see themselves not so much based on their culture, again, not looking at their race, but they're saying, well, now then our issue then becomes proving our citizenship. It becomes a nationalistic type of perspective. So that's what this author explores through this third article this week. Okay, so our final article this week, it is entitled, I'm just going to give you the short title of this article because it is also long, Feeling Like a Citizen Living as a Denizen. And this is by Tanya Galish Boza. And so this author, excuse me, she focused on her work after interviewing and working with 30 Jamaican deportees, folks who were deported back to Jamaica based on criminal activity that they had completed here in the United States. Now, it's important for us to understand, this author points out that the criminal convictions that these deportees that they were for nonviolent crimes, and some were drug-related crimes. However, for this particular article, what she's focusing on is that these immigrants who were here, they were living as legal permanent residents. And so being mindful that legal permanent residence kind of affords those immigrants with having access to the same rights as American citizens. However, if they are found to have participated in some type of illegal activity, they no longer have the right to live in the United States. And that's when they become deportees. That's when they are deported. Now, one of the things that this author also focuses on in relationship to these folks now having this title of being deported, they look at the changes that happen for, or I should say that she looked at the changes that happened for these 30 people based on their community ties, the relationships that they have established, and also the legitimate business that they may have had while they were here in the United States. All right, good people. So that's this week, talking about citizenship and national identity. As I stated in the beginning, please be mindful to watch that video by Dr. Barbara Zaborowski, as it directly relates to your weekly journal assignment. All right, good people, at this point, I bid you love, peace, and bacon grease, and I will see you on the discussion post.